Welcome to Showreel. I'm Clare Abbott.
And I'm Jacob Paint. Yes, I'm still here.
Later in the show, I'll give you a rundown of the upcoming British Film Festival, and Jacob will take a look at the newly released American film, The Butler.
But first, we'd like to welcome this week's guest hosts, Jacqui Carroll and John Nobbs from OzFrank Theatre. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
So can you tell us a bit about OzFrank Theatre? First of all, what is it?
Well, we've been going since 1992. Jacqui and I started off, I guess, as in the dance world. I was a modern ballet dancer. Jacqui was a choreographer, and we moved to theatre when we started this company in 1992. And I guess what defines us more than anything else would be the fact that we use a variation of a Suzuki training system. Mm-hmm. We call it the Frank Suzuki Actor Know-How.
Okay. And
that's a variant of the system that Tadashi Suzuki invented back in 1974 or something. So the fact that we use our training to make our actors and also to make our aesthetic, and the training is very much the fundament of what we do. It probably defines us as a company more than anything else.
And what is the Suzuki method exactly?
Well, the Suzuki method's a sort of highly codified, formalised method of training actors using a series of exercises which would, I guess, correspond in musical terms to scales and arpeggios for musicians. And what Mr. Suzuki has done is create a series of exercises which are very simple, highly formatted, in such a way as you can actually start using the knowledge of the body to create a voice. Okay. So
it's a very, we were talking about this before, it's a very Japanese sort of thing, that repetition and...
it comes from the same sort of part of the world that invented Aikido and Tai Chi, so you can see it's very similar, but the difference is, of course, it's actually a performance method rather than just a fitness system.
And how have you developed the Suzuki method and made it your own in a sense?
Well, I guess we introduced much more different sorts of music. We use Australian songs sometimes. There's a song by Little Paddy called Stomping at Maroubra, which we use for our stomping sequence as distinct from the music that Suzuki uses. Although I'd like to stress that his music's not just Japanese too, but we've just taken these exercises and evolved them into something that probably is something that Western actors can understand more. One of the problems with the Suzuki method per se, even though it's a universal system, is it's often seen as a Japanese style of acting because of the nature of the language and the nature of sometimes the music they use. So we spent a lot of time evolving exercises which are like evolutions of the original exercise in such a way as it becomes apparent that you're not just doing something Japanese, but something that might be much more pertaining to what you are and where you come from, whether you're Australian or we've taught in Croatia, all sorts of places.
Yeah.
So Jacqui, because you were just saying that you started out in ballet and you're a choreographer, do you see parallels between like the choreography and this method? Because we did do a workshop and it was
correct.
Very
yes,
choreographed.
I'd been around actors and I was being sort of groomed to be a director, and I was working with South Australian Theatre Company, and I didn't understand how actors worked because there was no preparation. They didn't work together. There was no collective training. Everyone came in having been selected individually, and I thought there must be something that can just cohese this group of people, and it has to be physical because only the body can bring you together. You know, my mind can't bring me together, but my body in a room with other people can. We can commune with each other. By chance, John got into a workshop that Suzuki was teaching in Melbourne, and I saw the method, and I thought, I had gone back to dance because the theatre world had disappointed me. I got back to dance and I saw the dance as formula. We trained every day. I knew what to expect when I walked into a room of dancers, what level of training they'd offer me. But actors, wasn't the same thing. Suddenly Suzuki's training was collective. They spoke together, they moved together. It was so exciting. I couldn't believe it. I thought, magic.
Collective with a simple language which anybody can do. One of the things about, say, classical ballet, you can be the highest paid performer like Nureyev or Sylvie Guillem, earning thousands and thousands of dollars a performance. The next day, 10 o'clock in the morning, you're doing the same ballet class as the newest member of the Corps de Ballet. So there's a great levelling of the language so that everybody's doing it all the time, and it's a similar thing with the Suzuki training.
Yeah. So with I guess, traditional theatre, you know, that I've been involved in myself, and compared to what you do, what would you say that the main difference is, and what you bring to it?
Well, the difference is really that other actors don't train. They prepare for roles, of course, and do things together, but we actually train together really much the same way as a football team trains or as a ballet company trains. And the training of itself is a type of experience where you create a series of languages, a series of steps. If you look at football training, those things where they dribble the ball between all those little sort of top hats and things like that.
Yeah.
And you could say that's very equivalent to what we're doing, but of course the other thing is we're talking about emotions and psychology as an overlay on that as well. But the difference is the commonality of the language and the simplicity of the language, so that anybody in the room can do that. And the exercises you'll probably be showing here as part of this interview will show that this is an exercise that anybody could do. You don't need special facility. In dance you need to turn out of the hips, you need certain structure, musicality, but this training's based on the predication that really anybody can do it. Your grandma can get up and do this stuff really. And well, so that means that everybody can participate in the same way.
Like when we did the workshop, like Jacob and Adam and Matt are all like actors, but I've never done any theatre related things, so it was really interesting. And
what did you find?
I guess just thinking about, like you said, about the cohesion and collectivity of it, because that's probably what a lot of people don't think. With dancing, you think it's all choreographed, everyone's working together. Actors, like, you're playing a character, you're playing a character, you're playing a character, but it's people feeding off each other and seeing yourself and them differently. That's something I picked up.
And be aware of other people. So of course you're playing your role, but you must be aware of other actors, not only the ones you're talking to, but the other ones in the room.
And you said like also aware of the space, so that where there's no actor. I found that was interesting.
Well, we're just saying that there's obviously you're playing a role of, say, Hamlet or Ophelia. There is that truth, but also there's a whole series of things about there's a space around you as you perform. There's a space between us, and we say, well, that's actually not nothing, that's actually a something. And the more you think of it as a something, the more charisma you develop, because you're actually seeing that your persona, your personality is actually larger than your body frame. It's actually occupying the space. And these are sort of quite arcane concepts in many ways, but nevertheless they're very important. Now, the top actors just know this instinctively. They just do, and you can see it, you can feel it. But we're saying that most of us mortals who want to get to that type of level can get there with the training. And it's one thing just to talk about, but you actually need a situation in which to actually practice that. So you talk about these things, and probably everybody talks about them in a way, but where you have a very sort of formatted situation, so you say, start the speech here, start it there, and you must finish it there. So in that moment, you actually also, not only thinking of the speech and the interpretation, but you're also thinking of the things that are happening to you whilst you're doing it.
I think that's why the workshop was so interesting for me, anyway. And well, we have to take a break now, but stay tuned for more Showreel. We'll be back with Jacqui and John very soon.
Lightly. 1, 2, take it forward. 3, now take it up. 4, now take it down. 5. So think of this idea as making sure, but one of the things I guess about this type of training is this idea of what movement is and what movement isn't. When to know which parts of my body are doing something and which parts of my body aren't doing something, because that's knowledge, and that's what charisma comes from. So that's really good, Matt, because you kept the demand going, and that's actually what made you more interesting. Not that you just changed to make it easy for yourself, but the fact that you tried to do your story with this incredible demand, with this elbows around the thing, and that's what made you interesting and finish.
Welcome back to Showreel. That was a clip from our trip to an OzFrank theatre rehearsal with Matt Clayton and Adam Fawns. We have Jacqui Carroll and John Nobbs from OzFrank Theatre here with us. So maybe we can talk a bit more about what we did in the rehearsal itself, just like the different exercises
we
and
did.
stuff like that. Yeah.
I guess you could say we did probably we were at 40 or 50 exercises, probably a huge number, which we don't do all the time, because that would probably take about 12 hours to run through. And we concentrate on certain things at certain times as how we feel about what we're doing.
Yep.
But the main thing is to think that the exercise, especially say what we call basic 2, which is the first one we did, where you did pick the leg up and then stomp the floor and take it forward. Once again, very simple language. It's turned in, it's not turned out like you would be in ballet. And you stress that each one of these things are experiences, really. So what it must look like some sort of position in a form of choreography, each one of those stops or those things are a point where you feel something very strongly. And the idea is to, I guess, you pick up and then you stomp the floor, which is embracing the ground at high energy. So it might look like you're hitting the ground, but in fact it's quite a soft thing, even though it's very powerful, it's quite soft. And all these things are about experiencing things at a very powerful level.
I guess for actors that are used to concentrating more on talking and what they're saying on stage, to look at the exercises that you're doing, it's, well, how is that going to help me? What am I really aiming at?
It might be easy to think this is like movement theatre, or doing movements, and a lot of it's called physical theatre, which we think is an absurd term. It's just theatre, like anything. What's not physical, etc. It's a silly word. But the point thing, I suppose, is to say that your body doesn't lie. You know, body language doesn't lie. And they've analysed that if you take some sort of conversation we're having, the percentage, if you to break down the percentage into the physical language, the sound, and the actual meaning, you find that 60% of all communications with the body, 30% is actually the sound, and only 10% is the actual content. So in all the things we're talking about, most of it's actually physical. And so that's something we think you should be concentrating on, rather than just the intellectual, the meaning of the word. And of course it's borne out really in statistics.
That's what they say about like script writing or something like that. It's show, don't tell. Like there's one line of dialogue can say so much by what you don't say in that line.
That's right. And that's, well, the reason for that is the unconscious mind that will take in stuff that's not sort of literary, not literal. And the most moving stuff in either theatre or film is actually the unspoken physical experience. You need the words obviously to frame that, to make people understand where it's coming from, but the power is really in the body. And so we say the same thing. Plus, the body is also the template. For us, we believe the body is where the voice starts to come from. So if you look at somebody who's bodied, you know, the voice is in their body, it looks like their whole voice is coming from the whole body, not just their mouth or not just their larynx. And that has to be trained up, like anything probably.
I know before we did the workshop, and we watched some other people doing the exercise we did with the teddy bears, and watching it, and it's kind of, you're watching it and think, this is a bit silly, it's teddy bears, and they're doing some funny voices, but then there's a point that it sort of crosses over to something else, and actually you can't really see it. I think it's not really conveyed with the video that we have. It's hard without actually being there, but it crosses over to something else and actually becomes kind of compelling. Which was interesting for me to watch, and then to do it as well.
It's interesting because in that particular exercise, we asked the actors to have a kind of madness at the beginning. It's Kasai, we call it after the name of a Japanese dancer who went berserk one night, and we said, that's interesting. Anyway, because the actors should experience a sort of primitive part of themselves. There should be an uncontrolled part which they can make manifest. And then they go right back and they start to pull it back. So it's full of all those little odd things happening all the time, and like you say, at the end of it, you suddenly think, oh, hang on.
Great actors, like great rock and roll performers, are shamans, essentially. They're shamans. So they, in order for them to be compelling, they have to go through a very powerful personal experience. And when the audience, and this is Lady Gaga, Elton John, it doesn't matter who you talk about, they've all got this amazing sense of shaman, what we call a shaman, like a witch doctor in a primitive society. And for them, they have to go through these experiences. If they don't go through them, there's nothing for us to actually participate in, to vicariously have our own experience from it. So, and of course, so you want to have this sort of primitive energy, if you like, this sort of wild quality, but of course it can't be too wild, because then it's not controlled at all. And I mean, a lot of people go so wild they never come back, really. You know, they lose themselves and they go crazy, and there's lots of stories of that, a lot of collateral damage. So you're saying, how do you create a situation where people can do this in a controlled environment so they don't have to actually lose their minds in the process? And something like the teddy bears is a way of accessing a type of thing, you know, when you look at a teddy bear, when anybody looks at a teddy bear, regardless of what sex they are, you get this incredible empathy that comes from this return to childhood mythology or something. There's a form of what we call personal mythology, and as soon as people do that, and what you're talking about, you say it looks ridiculous, but then suddenly these people just get this amazing look in their face, and you can actually see them communing, as it were, with some sort of psychological experience they may have had, you know, 5, 10, 25 years ago. And it happened to you because I saw it in your face. I mean, you can actually see it. And
yeah, after a while you stopped noticing, because we were being filmed, you stopped noticing there was a camera there, and stopped noticing there was an audience there, and you just sort of...
Yeah, and it's very easy to do that. Suddenly do it because it's a soft toy, it's not a baby, it's not a real animals. And you probably, as a child, would have had something similar, didn't you?
Yeah.
And you may still have it, I mean. And so you're accessing something that's very important to you, that's part of your past. And so we find it's very, very evocative and very, very interesting. It takes you to a very creative place. And I'd have to say that we've done this in Nepal, we've done it in Mongolia, we've done it with people who are, you know, very, very different cultures to ours, and had exactly the same result.
Well, I actually found that after all of the chaos and everything, to then suddenly we've got to put our attention on the bear, there was a certain sense of relief suddenly, not to have to do all of that, and then I guess some sort of sense of, you know, the teddy bear and what that means, and emoting with that. Well, we have to take another break. We'll be back soon with some info on the British Film Festival and a review of The Butler. Don't go away.
Welcome back to Showreel. I often find that many of the cultural or niche film festivals that come and go without being noticed, at least by many people I know, which is such a shame as they showcase some really spectacular talent, both undiscovered and well known. So with Australia's inaugural British Film Festival opening this November here in Brisbane, I thought I'd take the time to check out the latest in British talent. Let's take a look at the trailer. This year, there are 14 highly anticipated contemporary films showing, as well as 5 quintessential classics. The highlights of this year's festival include the opening night film One Chance, which tells the true rags-to-riches story of Paul Potts, played by James Corden, as he went from obscurity to fame after winning the first season of Britain's Got Talent. Also on the bill are the films Dom Hemingway, starring Jude Law and Richard E. Grant, How I Live Now, directed by Kevin MacDonald, who also directed The Last King of Scotland, and starring Saoirse Ronan from The Lovely Bones, in a modern tale of romance and a young girl's struggle to survive after World War III breaks out. And Good Vibrations, featuring Irish comedian Dylan Moran, and set in a record store in the heart of Belfast's developing rock scene in the 1970s. Rounding off the festival is the closing night Philomena, starring Judi Dench and Steve Coogan, in the true story of one mother's search for her lost son. The film was very well received at the Venice Film Festival recently, so it's definitely one to go see. And if you're into the classics, Lawrence of Arabia, The Third Man, 39 Steps, Great Expectations, and Brief Encounter will all be showing in a celebration of past British achievements in film. So definitely go and have a look at the full lineup, because as I said, I often find that film festivals such as this get missed because they are not screened everywhere and so slip under many people's radars. I was surprised by just how many big-name stars are in these films, such as Judi Dench and Jude Law, but I think it's equally well worth the watch to see some of the upcoming British talent that we'll surely see in more mainstream films over the next few years. The British Film Festival will screen from the 27th of November to the 8th of December at Palace Centro Cinema in Fortitude Valley. And now it's over to Jacob for his review of The Butler.
The Butler follows the story of Cecil Gaines, who was raised in the harsh realities of a cotton plantation before leaving and becoming employed as a White House butler, where he served 6 presidents before retiring. Let's take a look at the trailer.
I'm Cecil Gaines. I'm the new butler.
I want to hear all the stories.
The White House swore him with some kind of secret code.
He served 7 presidents.
I'm thrilled to be working with all of you over the next 4 years.
And during a time of change,
something special is going on down here, Dad.
Our boy's in jail, Cecil.
He became their inspiration.
I know your son is a freedom rider.
Turn the best!
No, I never understood what you all really went through. You've changed my heart.
The Butler is not so much about one man who happened to be the butler for many US presidents and his influence on them. It's more about the everyman who worked hard and kept their head down while trying to support their families and just living a good, decent life. It's about all the seemingly ordinary people and their place in the development of America. A quick glance at the cast will tell you that this is not just a little story about a humble man quietly toiling away at being a butler. This movie spans the butler's whole life and simultaneously covers a lot of the larger historical key points along the way to modern America's current level of racial acceptance. In covering such a vast period of time, with not only the butler's life but so many historical points and characters to cover, it would be easy to get lost. The film is held together with Forest Whitaker's narration and using well-known historical happenings such as changing presidents and assassinations to break it down into sections and keep it moving along. I didn't actually find the filmmaking to be that awe-inspiring. There was some nice cinematography and decent performances, but overall I didn't find the techniques used to be terribly interesting or original. They were basically condensing down a very emotive and difficult historical thread that would have been compelling no matter who directed it, with perhaps the exception of Michael Bay. I enjoyed the movie, but I could have just as easily watched a documentary about the butler, and it would have been equally as compelling. And I'm going to guess that as a documentary, it would have been more accurate. Not that I knew anything about the guy before watching this film, but Hollywood doesn't usually get historical accuracy, let historical accuracy get in the way when over-sentimentalizing a screenplay like this. It was an enjoyable movie with a great cast, makes some interesting points, but lost me a little with the broad storyline and over-sentimental telemovie crap. I think many will enjoy this movie more than I did. 3.5 stars. So, has anyone else seen The Butler?
No, unfortunately. No? With such a big cast like that, do you think it was well cast, or is it just for the star?
Some of them were. I mean, then you've got like certain people that were cast as certain presidents that didn't necessarily do justice to the president, even though they're great actors. That they could have cast someone else to play like Ronald Reagan, and
I
they
liked
would have done
Severus
it.
Snape being cast as Ronald Reagan. I thought that would have been
So
nice.
you felt that watching a documentary about the real person might have been more compelling than this film?
Well, for me, yeah. I mean, Forest Whitaker and Oprah Winfrey, you know, they had some nice scenes in there, and there was nice performances, but there was just so many characters and so much stuff that they're covering. I didn't really get into the character. Like, I didn't feel that connected to him.
Okay.
How historically accurate did you think it was, though?
I don't really know the history of it. I did look on IMDb, and there's a lot of mistakes in certain things. Like, he's wearing the wrong shirt at the end of it, which was after Obama got in. He was wearing a later sort of campaign shirt and different things like that. And there was a VW in the wrong places, and the walls, the fence at the White House was wrong in part of it. But I don't know historically in terms of what actually happened. Obviously, it's America, it's Hollywood.
Pretty hard to get a lot of that right, because that's such a long length of time, wouldn't it?
Oh, I remember they were saying supposedly in the White House they've got the wrong flag with too many stars on it.
Wow.
For a good portion of it. I thought that's something that they should be onto.
That's a clanger.
Yeah.
That's a clanger.
Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining us, Jacqui and John. It's been great having you on.
Thank you. A great pleasure.
Make sure to check out the Showreel podcast and our Facebook, Twitter and YouTube pages. Tune in next week for more Showreel when we're joined by the host of Turning Points, Sean Bindley. See you then.
Good show. I'm really excited about next week. So, yeah, when you come in, I was thinking we should have, I don't know, maybe you okay? Check, what is it? You can
Look, I've really enjoyed being on the show, and I'd like to stay, but...
What, Jacob? Tell me. I can handle it.
There's someone else that I have to leave.